Welcome everyone to Dabi and Costello. You might notice the lighting's a little different today, and we'll explain why. The misadventures of two opera singers from either side of the Hudson, and of usually dubious sobriety, though not today. But Stephen, is there something you want to say?
Yes.
Before we start the
First of
show.
all, yeah, I would like to apologize to one of our viewers from the last week's show with Jamie Barton. Supposedly, during the 15-second clip that we usually play before we bring a guest on, my microphone was on and I was chewing ice, and he was very upset. So I would like to apologize for chewing ice on my own show during a unlive clip, which you can find, by the way, on YouTube, where we stole it from. And there's a 15-second clip. We'll put it in the link in case you really
Yes.
want to see it again. And apologize. I will make sure my microphone is turned off next time I'm chewing ice.
I hope you feel bad. I just
I
want
feel
to say
terrible.
Yeah.
I went to bed. I couldn't sleep. I was thinking about it all night.
I'm sorry, it's so serious. Yeah.
I'm obviously. He was really angry. Really angry. He was on the comment. Whoever's chewing ice, either stop or turn off your microphone. It's like,
No. So
but,
okay.
but
Well,
the worst part, what made me feel bad about it was he wasn't watching the live version of the show. It was the recorded version of the show.
really?
So at that point, we couldn't do anything about it.
Oh, so we couldn't even edit it out. Well,
So I lost a lot of sleep last night, and sorry.
yes. So we're doing something different today. We're actually doing a recorded show because of the holiday and because of the time difference. But this is obviously airing at the normal time. So we still love all your comments and would be happy to see them. But regrettably, we won't be able to this time respond in real time like we normally do. But we have a wonderful show today, and I was when you first told me, Stephen, that we were going to get this particular guest, I was like, wait a minute, no way. And it just sort of, fell into our lap and came out of the blue because I got to be honest. And so people know, not too much inside baseball. We usually bring on the guest. We talk to them a little bit beforehand to let them know what's going on. And I didn't tell him, but he's probably going to know now that I've been watching his clips for years. And I really mean that. I know people like, oh, it's blowing smoke. No. I've been showing a few of these clips to my friends at parties and everything for years. And it's really exciting to be able to get this guy onto our show. And so, Stephen, is there anything you want to add before I do the formal
Bring him on.
bio?
No,
Okay,
bring
well, let's do the formal bio first. Our guest is the great violinist, composer, actor. These were all, I just knew him sort of as a violinist at the time, but apparently he's doing everything, a real auteur. Alexey Igudesman. He's one half of the fantastically talented and wonderful comedy music duo Igudesman and Zhu. He is Russian born, and he immigrated to Germany very young. At a young age, at around 12, he was accepted into the Yehudi Menuhin school in England. He studied with Boris Kushner. He went on. We'll talk. He's collaborated with John Malkovich, with Roger Moore. He's played with the likes of Gidon Kramer and Billy Joel. I mean, so many people that he's worked with and collaborated with. But it's such a unique style, and it's such a different thing, and he's actually the first string player that we've had on our show. So I just wanted to show one of the clips that I used to show to all of my friends when we were doing this. So let's get a little taste of the great Alexey Igudesman right here. I'll just show you this little clip here right now.
First I was afraid, I was petrified, kept thinking I could never live without you by my side. But then I spent so many nights thinking how you did me wrong, and I grew strong. And I learned how to carry on, and so you're back from outer space. I just walk in to find you here with that sad look upon your face. I should have changed that stupid lock. I should have made you leave your key. If I had only known for a second that you would be leaving me. Go, now go! Just turn around! Don't turn around now, because you're not welcome anymore. You tried to hurt me with goodbye. You thought I'd crumble. You thought I'd lay down and die.
That's a milk frother, isn't it, Alexey?
It is. It's a milk coma, which is traditionally used in our show. So, of course, it works in the piano.
Yes. And then here's your buddy.
Yeah, he's got one in his hand. That's why his voice is.
What was that? I'm sorry?
Like that. He's got one in his pants,
Oh,
in his trousers. So that's why his voice is.
Alexey, welcome to the show. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming. It's what a joy, what a pleasure. I mean, I was telling Steven, I have a longtime partner, Jessica, and she's like, "Who's coming on your show next week?" And I'm like, "Well, it's Alexey Igudesman." And she's not in the music world, so I showed her this video, and she pointed out something that's so it's one of those things that's sort of like obvious, but not until someone kind of points it out to you. And that is that none of that comedy works as well if you're not as talented a player as you are. You know, like if somebody is just like messing around on the violin, that's not funny. But because it's so good and so proficient technically, I think that's what really helps. Is that sort of like something that came into your mind? Like, wow, I'm a great player, so I can kind of mess around and do these amazing things with it.
Well, yes, certainly, because, I mean, look, essentially, whatever shows that I've done or that we've done with the Igudesman and Jew, we've never, interestingly enough, we never went for being funny. We never actually tried to be funny, which is another layer of being funny, because first of all, what we wanted to do, and what I've always wanted to do is just to reinvent the music and the concert platform, especially because it's for the last 100 or so years, actually maybe even 120 140 years, it just got rather stuck. Ever since the time of starting with Wagner, going on to Mahler, it just became so bloody serious. It just became so deadly obnoxious on the one side. On the other hand, it's basically, you go to a concert, you feel like you're going to a funeral. I mean, what is that about? Everybody, performers come on stage, they all wear black, they bow, nobody smiles. It's like, who died? Well, these days, a lot of people are dying, but nobody's in the concert halls. But basically, when people go to a concert, we always thought it should be a celebration. It should be exciting and fun. And in many ways, what we're doing as Igudesman and Jew, it's not even that modern. It's actually a little bit more retro. Because back in the 19th century, during the time of Beethoven, Mozart, Beethoven, later the Romantics, Liszt, Strauss, the format was much more open. When the Paganini gave a concert, it wasn't like, the symphony, the concerto, and then everybody bows. No, it was like people talked to the audience. There was a movement of a symphony. Then a young talent came on, who was a surprise guest, then maybe a singer did something, then somebody did a funny trick. During Beethoven's violin, the Holy Violin Concerto by Beethoven, the violinist who premiered it, Franz Clement, his name was, between the movements, he did some tricks playing some of his own pieces, playing the violin upside down.
Wow.
And that was normal. So, yeah, of course, that we have a certain level of virtuosity, and we are, passionate musicians, that of course it helps make it even funnier, the absurd situations that we put ourselves in during the performances, and the unusual arrangements and own compositions that we do. But our point is just also that we kind of we take our comedy and the funny things very seriously, because for us it's just music. I mean, whether we're playing Beethoven itself can be hilarious. People just forgot about it. So we just take our shows very seriously, and when things screw up on stage, and there's nothing funnier than a clown who is trying to be serious and then falls over on a banana skin, but then tries to get up, and while he falls over, he does a pirouette and lands back on his feet and is surprised about it himself. So on the one hand, taking oneself seriously, on the other hand, of course, being able to do it, and even though it looks like one is screwing up, of course, we know what we're doing.
Yes.
It's funny because in your new show that you do online called Amuse News, there's a Jews rant on there about the same exact thing, about how the orchestra comes out and they're all in black and it's like a funeral procession. And then, the singer comes out and he's wearing white tie and tails, standing up there like he's better than everybody else. And it's like, and as I'm listening to that, it's hilarious. But I'm like, when did we get so full of ourselves that like we come out and we think that we're just better than everybody else when we come on stage? And like, no, stop, just pay 100% attention to me. Focus, listen to this high art that I'm making. And it's just, and we talked about this with the show with Jamie Barton. That's probably one of the reasons people don't come to the opera anymore. Less people are coming to classical music because they just feel so almost like you're being talked down to when you do something like that.
It didn't used to be like that. I mean, during Mozart's time and during the opera, of course, it was also maybe sometimes disturbing, because people did used to talk, especially in the, in the little parts which were, all sorts of hanky-panky used to happen during the opera. But that was the end place to be. That was like the cinema. That was like a nightclub, being at the opera, partly. And for example, there's a famous letter of Mozart to his dad saying, I started playing my piano concerto, and after my new piano concerto, after like about 30 measures, the audience just went wild and started clapping, and we had to stop and start again because they were just so wild. What a great audience! Yeah, that was his thought. Not like, oh, how blessed. No, that was a great audience. Yeah. So I don't know what happened. I think Mahler got a bit pissed off, apparently, because he was one of the culprits. I love his music, but of course he wanted
and Liszt
everything.
Too, no?
Well, no, Liszt was I think Liszt was a bit more communicating with the public. He used to go into the public and have a drink with them. Apparently, he used to have some drinks, but Mahler definitely wanted more decorum in the concert hall, and of course there are great concert halls that were built, like the Vienna Musikverein, where a lot of the Mahler symphonies were premiered, and that's bit by bit it became this holy thing. And it can be that, but that's only one part of the aspect of the music. I think going to a concert is an extraordinary experience, especially during these times where it's so rare. It's become rarer again. And it should be a joy and celebration of life, and not some kind of, super formal event. And I think it will, eventually will change into that. It's just we are part of the way of switching, and what I do and what we do with the Igudesman and Jew is part of the movement of saying, okay, we've had our fun. I mean, we've had our seriousness. Now it's time for the fun.
I always think it's funny because every time we talk to someone or you watch interviews of other musicians, they're always like, well, it's about me trying to show emotion and have an emotional connection with the audience and have this and touch them this way. But we don't want them to talk. We don't want them to applaud. We don't want them to show emotion. We just want them to feel the emotion we're giving them. It's like, it's unbelievable.
It's weird. It is a strange thing, because then one wonders, why do you need them just to sit there, just to give our, exactly. it's a give and take. It's a much more interactive thing, and it can be. And you know what? People think like, oh, but it would be chaos if people laughed and talked and clapped in the middle. No, it's not. It's possible. In our performances, we managed to do it, and there are younger audiences. Very interesting, and some younger classical music countries, like for example Taiwan or China, Korea, and we've experienced extraordinary audiences who, well, first of all, they're very educated musically, so they actually laughed also at the hidden jokes. A lot of the time we have, in our shows with the Igudesman and Jew, we have many different jokes. We have the level of jokes which is like a little more sophisticated. We have kind of like the musical jokes. Oh, you kind of have to get it. But at the same time, we have slapstick, we have ridiculousness and the slipping on the banana skin, so that there is something in there for everyone, you know, so you don't have to be like a highbrow classical musician. But if you are a highbrow classical musician, it can help in certain ways. And for example, in Taiwan, they laugh at all the jokes. They laugh at the hidden jokes and everything, and they're not afraid to laugh, to clap. But then when we're playing something quiet and beautiful, you can hear a pin drop. They really listen, because they really also, they're a younger audience and they want to be there. They don't want to be there to be seen or to say, oh, I was at this and this concert. They are passionate about it. And I think if we transmit that passion and we bring that passion back into the concert hall, and above all back into the schools, and to communicate that to the younger generation like they often do in Asia, then we're going to have the concert halls full of a fun young public who is not afraid to laugh or to clap, but actually knows their shit also.
You know, that's our biggest problem here in the States, is we make classical music inaccessible to the younger generation, to kids, to students, to young musicians, and it's becoming a big problem. And I think that's another one of the reasons that classical music in the United States is becoming so hard. It's because the younger generation that would usually study it knows nothing about it, because it's no longer accessible to them. And somewhere along the line, they really need to remedy that. And it's an issue, especially now during COVID. And one of the reasons I feel like a lot of these arts organizations can't get donations is because of the younger generation. They're just not interested. It's because they weren't made aware of it, because we've taken it from schools, we've taken it from everything else. So it's a real problem.
You know, and music isn't the only one that suffers from this. You know, I've seen Shakespeare on Broadway a few times. I remember I saw Hamlet with Jude Law a few years back here on Broadway, and that was, you know, very separate from the audience, or the audience was very separate. And then an English troupe headed by the great actor Mark Rylance came in and did Richard III. It was, and he was Richard III, and it was in the old way, where the men were playing the women, and they had audience on the stage, and there were certain moments where, you know, the audience, like, he would make some monologue where he said something bad about a woman, and a woman in the audience went, and he went, you know, like right back, like, whoa, this is, you know, we think of Shakespeare, you know, to be or not to be, this really pretentious thing, but that's not how it was. And there are people on the stage, you know, there's one of the lines, I remember one of the two assassins are saying in the line is, "What shall we do?" And he looks at one of the audience, he goes, "What shall we do?" Like right at the person sitting there on the stage, and breaking that wall, and people were just like crying, laughing over and joyous. And then, of course, just like with how you mentioned with the serious piece, when it became the serious monologue, when it became the serious soliloquy, it was back down. So I think that's the way to go for all of us. And we talk about this almost weekly, about that wall that happens, that people. They like when I invite them to the opera. There's so many people that I know. Like in my circle of friends growing up, I was the only musician really. And when I invite them to the opera, it's this face. You know, I've never been. I don't know what to do. You know, it's almost like they need to learn how to watch, and that's so ridiculous. Like nobody says, "Oh, I've never watched a television show. I don't know how to do that." So I love that you break it down. You've moved on though. Not moved on, I should say, but you've moved into composing as well, or is that always something that you've done?
It was always a big part, a huge part of what I was doing, because of course for a lot of our shows it needs the arranging and the composing, but I've always been writing music ever since I went to school. Really, I studied composition. I've got many works published. Like, look what I have here.
Oh, we'll give you the full screen. Hold on. There you go. Let's talk about it.
It's one of my newest publications. It's for two violins. It's called Beethoven and More Violin Duets, and this is me as Beethoven. And basically, it's reinventions of mine of Beethoven. But I mean, of course, this is partly arrangements, but it's Beethoven rethought in different ways, and that's what I love doing as well. Taking music, sometimes stealing other people's music, as long as they've been dead over 70 years, that's okay. And reinventing, really rewriting it. So that's a big part of what I do. I've been doing a lot of film music at the moment as well. I'm writing on something. I can't tell you what, otherwise I'd have to kill you. But I work a lot with a wonderful film composer, Hans Zimmer, throughout many years. He's a very close friend. And
we have a story about him, actually. That's great.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I worked on the Sherlock Holmes movies. Most of the violin stuff of that is mine. Mine are also arrangements and my crazy playing and reinvention of that. So yeah, composition is one of the biggest parts of what I'm doing, and it flows into everything. I mean, my YouTube show, Amuse News, that has a lot of my music, all the little jingles and everything around that. That's something that I do, and I've done a lot of classical big orchestra works as well that many wonderful orchestras have performed. I've had commissioned works even from the New York Philharmonic and the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra. So I'm pretty busy with that, basically.
Wow.
Can we put a link to the new book in the?
Oh yeah.
Yes, is it on your website, Alexey? Is it available?
Yes, it's on Universal Edition. It's my publisher. They've got, I don't know, maybe 150 works of mine. I don't know, a lot of stuff. I mean, I haven't overtaken Bach yet, but that'll be a while until then.
I can order it for my wife for Christmas.
Yeah, I have so many violin duets. I don't know why, but actually I know why. When I was studying, I realized, one of the easiest things to do as a violinist is not to play with piano, because violin, where do you get a nice piano? I mean, I have a beautiful Steinway here, but usually, especially on the street, you don't usually get a piano. And as a student, you just want to whip up your violin and not always play on your own. So what do? You got a friend who plays the violin, and you play some violin duets. It's normal. But I realized there's like hardly any repertoire. Basically, there's like a couple of duos by Mozart. Then there's Bartók, 44 short, strange little duos. And then a lot of more or less obscure composers like Spohr, some decent things, Viotti, but that's it. Nothing fresh, original, different. And basically, I've decided, like, since around 15, 20 years, I've been writing violin duos and all sorts of different styles. I've got a book called Klezmer and More, Celtic and More, Latin and More, and all these different styles of music which I take, transform, make my own, and reinvent, like Beethoven and other things like that. You have some of my music there. Wow, you're going into my homepage. Cool.
Yes. High-tech operation here. I noticed perusing through these through your music works, actually, that you have a piece called "Be Jewish and More." Can you tell me about that one?
No, and actually, no. It's called Klezmer and More, the book, and the piece is called "Be Jewish." Why
Be Jewish, Why Don't You? I'm sorry. Yes, the piece. Be Jewish, Why Don't You? Can you tell me about that piece?
Listen. What shall I say? I just needed the title. Whatever sells.
Yes.
So that book's dedicated to my composition teacher, Malcolm Singer, who was Jewish, and himself a pupil of Ligeti, another quite crazy composer, wonderful composer, but quite nuts.
Oh wow. I wanted to show this. If you don't, I doubt you'd mind, but I want to show. I don't know if Stephen has even seen this yet. This salsa piece that you did. I think that the audience should really see the Salsa de la Luna, and you have this wonderful little thing. And I think that everyone should see this. So because I want to ask you about this project as well. So hold on, let's take a listen to this. Some moves you got there, Alexey.
It's all in a day's work.
Is this a friend of yours?
Yes, she's a wonderful violinist called Rusanda Panfili, who I've known since she's, literally 16 years old here in Vienna, and we've worked together developing. I would say, in a way, even though it seems like fun and lighthearted, I mean, some of the stuff is kind of groundbreaking, if you will, because to be able to play on a high level and do certain moves which go against the music is really pretty hard. But at the same time, it's incredibly interesting and satisfying. So the movement and playing, it's something that I've been developing as well for the last couple of decades. So I've been doing I did a lot of shows with Rusanda and with other wonderful musicians, a lot of young musicians who I've got into movement and playing. And of course, I have also often worked with a wonderful contemporary dancer called Manaho Shimokawa, who was
some videos out there, yeah.
Some videos with her where we intertwine, so the violin playing and the dancing intertwines, and I always like to test the limits and the possibilities. Having said that, those pieces work fine without all the movement. I mean, that's not the point of the music. It's just, this is my own personal exploration of it. But I've heard those duets. I'm very lucky that many people and many young people as well play my music and play my violin music, and many of them just play it straight, and I love it. It's great, and no problem with that.
Alexey, how do you get an idea like that to do your show? Do you find the piece first, and then that you want to perform, and then you figure out what you can do with it, or do you just or do you have an idea of a show that you want, and then you put the pieces in? It
both and everything. It's always it's a process that comes from many sides. Sometimes it's you hear a piece and you think, wow, that would be cool. Just imagine one could dance to it. And that's, that, and sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes it's like idea, oh, I'd love to do a dance movement where I do this and I do dubstep and I do popping and locking and then, oh, which music can we find to for that? So it really works from all these different ways. But my main thing really is trying to be creative and trying to stay as creative as possible, because I think ultimately as a human being, that's like my overall grand philosophy. This is essentially, that is really what makes us different and what makes us special as a human race. I think it's our ability to create and to be creative in such special ways. I mean, the animal kingdom is wonderful, and they do great things. Those animals. But why did us humans? Why did we win, so to speak? Why is it not the whales or the monkeys or the elephants? I think it's because we make up stuff. We invent stuff and we have these ideas and we pretend that things exist that may not exist. And creativity works on all levels, even like, let's just say anything, a company, for example, like Apple, let's say, or whatever. I don't want to plug them necessarily, but what is it? It doesn't exist. It's not real. It's like, oh, we call it a company. It's a made up thing. There's no monkey in the world who is going to come and say, oh, I have a company too. It's called Coconut. And there you can, if you give me all of your coconuts next year, I'll deliver you something. No, I mean, that's crazy to be able to do that. And of course, that's creativity on a let's put it this way, more economic sense. But that's us humans. So in a way, the most pure creativity for me is what we do as musicians and as artists, because that is making up things just for the sake of making up things. And in a way, that's a holy thing, because one thing is, okay, you make up things in order to earn money or this or for food and that. But when you do it just for the pleasure of doing it, that's the magic. That's what makes us human. And that's why I think the arts are in many places they're undervalued, because that's what makes us human.
You know, there's a big debate now in the opera community because of COVID. A lot of companies have gone to more digital and to more virtual performances and things like that. And we always talk about, when we talk about singers, you know, electricity is kind of like a big no-no for us. We feel like it, you know, it changes our voices, you know, and I'm sure there's a certain degree of that as well with instrumentalists. And but there is a sense that we do have to adapt, or we're going to be left behind. We're going to be dinosaurs if we don't. And people are doing things online, but it's still just sort of canned performances. We had a guest, my friend Rayanne Bryce Davies, who was actually just on a Grammy nominated. We didn't get to do the Grammy nomination, Stephen. So many of our guests were nominated, but she did almost like a music video of a Donizetti aria that she did, and it was all on the front pages of the opera sites as well. You have adapted so well the classical to this sort of virtual digital space, and so well produced. What advice would you have to us as opera singers, where we feel like the whole appeal is hearing that voice live, but we can't recreate, definitionally we cannot recreate that amazing live acoustic sound. We can't recreate that virtually, but that's the whole appeal of it. So that's sort of the conundrum that we face, is how do we explain to people the best thing about opera is hearing it live, and here's a recording that sounds nothing like how it does live, which is the whole appeal of it. But because you've adapted so well, what would you say to companies who are trying the virtual space?
Well, I think, again, we're coming back to creativity. It really is literally about how creative you can be with what you have. You mentioned very, very rightly that one of the greatest appeals is that feeling of this incredible voice, to hear and to feel it live. So why not think, okay, how can we translate that visually? So perhaps there's many ways of doing it as well. There's ways of doing that with a smaller budget, with a bigger budget. These days, the incredible thing is just these little phones here. You know, some of them are so good that one can shoot fantastic footage with them. Really very good, especially if you learn a little bit about lighting and this and that. And I think, for example, if you think of space, for example, you want to recreate that great space. Yes, you can't have the feeling of live, but then again, live, you couldn't go on the top of a hill and sing an incredible aria with an incredible background. That's not possible. You can't do that, and then get into the face of the singer. So how about that? Or there's many ideas like that one can have, where when first of all does a fantastic recording and then thinks of creative ways of making a video. Now a video as well, or videos, can be very expensive, but they can also be these days very inexpensive if you're creative, if you have the right friends, if you're starting off, for example. There's always a way to try to do it for virtually nothing. So there are so many ways of doing that. And I think the important thing is, especially in these days, to start doing it. Very often it's like, oh, I wouldn't even know, how do I do it? I need better cameras and this, I need it there. You know what? Just start. Just do something and learn by doing. And because in the end, that it is part of, whether there's COVID or not, that is the digital part is part of our future. And I've realized that on so many levels. Even though, for example, me as well, I encourage so much the live experience and live playing. I have actually here, I have the company called Music Traveler, basically, which is a startup where basically we started, and we're doing that. We have venues which you can rent, like Airbnb, by the hour, where you can play and rehearse or perform. So it's like Airbnb for musicians. It's running all over Europe already. It's coming to the States, and etc. But of course, and that's all about being able to play live. But now the pandemic has started, we realized we need to add the digital. So now we have, I would say, arguably the easiest way to monetize on a stream that there is out there. Of course, there's a few platforms, but it's always rather complicated, etc. So we wanted to give that experience of being able to just to put up your videos as a musician, do those videos, like you said, make some incredible, beautiful videos, but being able to put it up and have a very simple ticketing system, because it's not sustainable. Of course, you can put it up just on YouTube without anything and hope that millions of people will watch it. But it's different days from before. It's the algorithms are so complicated, this and that. You have to really, it's a world of its own to be able to do that. I don't discourage to do it, but it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of digital work, completely different type of work. So I think as a lot of musicians, a much easier possibility, because we do have people who are fans, even less known musicians have fans who would love to give money as well for the performances. And I think the digital world is an important one. And as I said, there are several platforms, but with Music Traveler, we are starting a very simple way of streaming. Basically, you just create a simple profile, and you put a URL of your unlisted YouTube link in, a photo, a description, and that's it. And you can send out the link, and you can just decide, do you want €2, €5, €10, €20 for the stream. People are able to give more if they want. And it's so important that it's made easy, because in the past, there's a few. It's coming onto that site very soon. When one signs up, one can just do it. We have wonderful ambassadors, of course, like John Malkovich, Billy Joel, Yuja Wang, Hans Zimmer, who support the platform. But this as well,
never heard of them. Yeah.
This platform will now make it so much easier for musicians to earn money digitally. And as well, what we've decided, as well as the only platform out there, we're not going to take a penny for it. We're just going to have this as help for musicians. We're not going to take our 50% or 40 or 20 or whatever. It's the money will go, minus the minimal fee for the money transfer. It's all goes to the musicians. So I think that swerving back around to your original question, there are many ways to transform even the beautiful opera voices in that with creativity. And I think there are many ways now which are starting where one can monetize on it. It'll take time for it to be as profitable as live, which doesn't mean it won't be. And if one is clever about it, there are already people living from that. So I highly encourage it. Of course, it will not replace live performances, but it doesn't have to. I think in the end, it's going to live very comfortably next to each other.
I feel like we should do something, Stephen. I'm so pumped suddenly. We should do
Do it.
like
And
we
it
should
is-
do like the Pearl Fishers duet from either side of the Hudson.
Yeah, why
You
not?
know?
And you
Like,
know what? Then get it out on Music Traveler, and
Yeah, I would get
for
on
a week
Music
or
Traveler.
two, and then have it out in the public
Yeah.
afterwards. So the idea is, well, you can just first of all do it there for a while, and then release it to the public. But do it. We would love to feature you guys as well. It'd be
That's
great.
a great idea. We're gonna do it.
Alexey, I wanted to ask you because you're one of the we started the show during COVID when everything was canceled, and you're one of the few guests that have actually had the coronavirus, and
Yes.
you've done a several interviews and talking about the psychological impact of losing senses like your taste and smell and being isolated. Can you talk to us about your experience with the virus and what it did to you, and do you still have do you still have side effects from it, and can you just give us some insight on it, because there's a lot of people that are curious.
Right. Well, I first I had first some symptoms in the beginning of November, and basically, was very curious. I mean, I had a mild form, definitely. I think probably one of the mildest forms there are. I didn't have fever. I did not have a cough even. So people say, "Oh, so what are you complaining about?" But the difficult it is a very treacherous illness on many different levels, because it affects you. It also affects you strongly psychologically. It made me very weak. It basically one can tend to get very tired, lose one's sense of smell. I did lose my sense of smell, but what was very worrying is though I was very positive. I tried to stay positive. It dragged me down so much. At times I got better. You get better for a day, and then you feel bad again. You have, I had a bit of breathing difficulties, and then you get so worried. You think, okay, that's it. Of course, not everybody is the same, but it definitely, because of your weakness physically, it affects you psychologically and neurologically very strongly. That people don't talk about that. So I recommend very much people who have it as well, who then often tend to be in self-isolation, like I had to be, to seek help psychologically through friends, talking to doctors who can calm one down, and not being afraid of taking some mild calming pills or something, or just even popping a Xerox or something. I mean, I don't encourage it generally, but in this case, also in order for you to be calm, because you need the calmness in order to get over it. It does last a long time. It does last weeks, and the effects, even after I was negative again, tested myself several times negative, still had a little bit of breathing issues. I wasn't fit for a while. Now I feel 100%, but of course I haven't done any exercise for like quite a while. So of course I'm not 100% back. So I would strongly encourage people not to get it, first of all. So no. I mean, they're laughing, but there are many young people who are out there who say, "Oh, I don't care, it's fine, I get it." Could be, but it could also be very negative. Then that's one thing. Number two, there's people saying like, "Oh, once the vaccine comes, like, I'm not going to take it because God knows what the vaccine is going to do." I promise you, the vaccine, the side effects will affect you way less than even the mildest infection. I think. Of course, there will be anomalies, but I think the chance of you having something really bad from the side effect is like a millionth of that of you getting COVID and having negative side effects in the long run. So I really do encourage people to take it seriously, to watch out for themselves and the close people around them, and just also to people, it's so easy to say, "Oh, let's go against the system. They're trying to repress us," and anti-masking, all that stuff. Look, let's just look a little bit at history. Let's just go back 100 years. It's documented. We had the Spanish flu. We had the same shit. People wearing masks. People protesting for wearing masks. Huge demonstrations in San Francisco. "Oh, we don't want to wear masks." People dying because they didn't wear masks. People saying, "Oh, if they want to control us," and that's it. It was literally the same thing, and there wasn't a big conspiracy back then. There isn't a big conspiracy now. every 100 years or so, the world has a pandemic. It's just right now, it's also we've traveled so much that it spreads even more easily. It's still comparatively a luxury pandemic compared to the Spanish flu, where so many more people died. And by now, of course, our medicine is much further. But please take it seriously. And you know, we're trying to look out for each other here. So let's just not be reckless. Even as a musician who suffers so much from it, not being able to play live, I support every measure that we can try to do.
It's true. You don't think about it. I mean, with this virus, for instance, you forget about the mental impacts that it can have on you, especially, I mean, because you don't know how the virus is going to progress. So if you get it, it may be mild, but you don't know if it can progress into something more serious. I have an aunt personally that has had a fever now for 7 days, a very high fever, rushed to the hospital because her oxygen level went down, and she's getting better now, not out of the woods, but better. And then some people just don't know they have it at all. But once you get it, you then go into isolation, where if anyone's ever been sick with a major complication or a major virus, something, you have people that are there for you, helping you, getting you through this. You know, if you need something, they can get it. Someone's always in the room. With this, not so much. You're there by yourself. It's all
so
alone.
hard. Mm-hmm. And you really get into these panics and depressions. I mean, and many people, I've spoken to people, and people don't realize that that's a symptom, and not like, oh, I'm just being stupid or this. No, it's a real actual symptom of the sickness, is that you can get into these, but one has to remember one can treat this as well. So rather than just, you know, because I'm just afraid that people who are just too weak, they would, you know, people could commit suicide or God knows what, because it does drive you crazy, because you're thinking that's it. It's over. Yeah. There's nobody you can really talk to. You feel too weak to really talk to anyone, and you have this heavy breathing, and you think, okay, it's getting worse, and it's terrible. But that you can help yourself with, and we have to be there for each other for that as well.
You know, my cousin in Israel, Elad, got COVID, and during this shutdown, I had a fever. And I was worried, of course, that it could be COVID. It wasn't a terribly high fever, but it was, you know, significant. And I was, you know, I'm messaging him and I'm asking him about it. And that was the key thing that he kept mentioning. He didn't say, oh, make sure you rest. Oh, make sure you do this. He said, stay positive. Stay positive. Yes. That was, and it was such a weird... It was such a objectively, you know, like when you go in, like that's such a strange thing, you know, when someone has the flu, like, oh, make sure you sleep, take this pill, you know, like you don't like stay positive, sure, but that's like lower on the list. But this was like at the top of the list. And when I mentioned that to a friend who also was suffering from something and wasn't sure, I said, listen, I'm going to tell you what my cousin told me. And he said, you know, that it's the mental game, that you have to stay positive. And he says to me, my friend says, that's what my other friend who had COVID, that was the first thing he said too. So now it's 3 people who don't know each other. All that's the top of the list is essential. The mental game. Yeah.
Stay positive, but also realize that you can't always. And don't be, because I was also just, I'm such a positive person. So I was like thinking, what the hell is happening with me? I'm like panicking. I'm like this, until I understood, okay, that's part of this shit. And like I said, I mean, I took like some little droplets. I took very, very little, but it was good. It just calmed me down. And because it's important as well, you do need the rest. One does need maximum rest, not to go out of it too quickly. I have friends who've had it, for example, who said, okay, it's over. They went exercise, prolonged the whole recovery for literally months. So you have to pull it through and just not go for your daily jog, even though you may feel better, because it just really, it's a wave like that as well. It's not like, oh, I'm better now. Yeah. No, then it hits you back. And that's the mental game as well, because you think you're fine, even 1 day, 2 days, and suddenly you're feeling bad again.
Alexey, I wanted to ask you, before all the shutdown started, you were scheduled to do the music critic at Kennedy Center in April. So obviously that didn't happen, correct? It didn't happen. But do you have it on the books to reschedule it?
Oh, we would so love to reschedule that. We had a wonderful US tour with John Malkovich and wonderful other musicians. The Music Critic basically is essentially it's a show about music critics, obviously, but it's actually more of a positive show about music. Basically, I found some of the most horrible critics about some of the most beautiful music ever written, and I managed to recruit my dear friend John Malkovich to be the music critic who recites these horrible critics and just puts us down. And in the end, what I found a horrible, terrible, devastating review about John Malkovich, and I put it to music. And I think it's one of his favorite things to do. Basically, it just talks about how one should deport John Malkovich from Turkey, where it was a critic in Istanbul, and how he should never come back with such a bad play again, and that he should go back to study at the Steppenwolf Theater and all of that. And John Malkovich recites this with such a passion, and a very curious fact. Just literally the last performance before the shutdown was in Istanbul, where the interview was from. Not the interview, the critic was from, and we invited that critic to the performance and to the press conference.
Did he come?
Yes, and he turned to be a sweetheart, who then was very apologetic, partly, but I mean, John was like, "No, please." You felt so passionate. It's amazing that you hated something so much, and so we embraced. That's a big thing. It's to embrace your critique, because it's so easy to be devastated. But in the end, every critique one has in art is utterly subjective. So we kind of make fun of that. So in a way, the music critic is a whole concept and work is a very positive work, because it shows that people rip apart not just John Malkovich, but they rip apart Beethoven. We have Debussy in it, where music critic talks about how ugly he looks. I mean, that's very important for the music. You have people, amazingly bad critics about Brahms and even by Tchaikovsky himself. So it's a shame. We would love to take the show to the US. We were scheduled to do it, of course, at the Kennedy Center in Washington and Berkeley and in Texas and several places. We really want to reschedule this again. We hope to do so, and John would love to do the show as well in the US someday.
We hope you do too. We'd love to see it here. I mean,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. It's a special
Steven,
one.
do you remember your negative reviews, Steven? Can you quote them? I can quote some of my negative reviews. Actually, I remember.
I can. There was only one time I actually got to meet one of the reviewers that gave me a negative review, and it was by the head of the opera company, a company I'm working for. I'm not going to say where it was, but said, "Oh, Steven, have you met so and so from this newspaper?" And I said, "Oh, that's okay. I have nothing to say anyway." He wrote that in his review, so I'd rather not talk to him. In front of him, he just had this face like, it's funny, I don't mind it. Look, you're talking to somebody that most likely can never do what you do anyway, telling you how to do it.
But they need to write, and let's judge them on the quality of their writing, not the content. The content is subjective, but are they good writers or not? Did he write it well? That's all. So
of course, I feel like the music critic has evolved into the political critic, because now during COVID, a lot of the things we read are all opinion pieces based on what's happening, and everyone now takes them as facts. So it's very strange. It's what it is.
Gideon Dabi's Zuniga was sung with a thin voice. Classical New Jersey, February 1999.
well, kind of to, the whole music, I mean, part of the music critics and everything, as well, musical reporting is like the music world can take itself so seriously. That's partly why I started the YouTube show Amuse News, to report things in a fun way, to take subjects, rip them apart in a very clearly subjective way, because to try to be objective about music and it's like, trying to say what tastes better, bananas or chocolate. I mean, I don't know.
I loved your fake news section. Your fake news section in Amuse News, when you're talking about, I think it was Heifetz that had the third arm. Oh, it was great.
It's an alternative fact. Yeah, that's why he was managed to do things. So, in the format, we're trying to shake things up and change things around. I've got a wonderful new guest. Our new show is launching on the 25th, very timely, 25th of December, Amuse News on my YouTube channel. And I'm going to have a wonderful pianist, Gabriela Montero, as my guest. She's an extraordinary improviser as well, and it's called, the main subject is going to be strange music. So it's all about all the weirdos that are out there, and there are plenty of wonderful weird people there. And of course, what I try to do also as well, to keep myself creative, I try to find write a song that is fitting to the subject and produce a music video with it, which kind of is the most of the work, to be honest. But what the hell? I mean, I was thinking, if I'm going to do this, when if not now, right? And I guess for you guys, it's the same thing. I mean, when are we going to do this? What we're doing, if not now? And let's make people enjoy music. Let's encourage people to listen to music. Let's make people laugh a little bit, and I think that's a good thing.
Absolutely. I wanted to transition into a couple of stories now, actually, and it reminds me of something. You said you're in Vienna. Yeah, you're in Vienna. So I'll tell you, my mother's mother, Hungarian Jewish, God rest her soul. When they were flying to Israel once, they were looking at tickets, and there was a layover in Vienna, and she said, "Absolutely not. I am not stopping in Vienna. I'm not going there. I'll even stop in Berlin, but not Vienna, for obvious reasons." And it reminded me of that you're there now. And it just sort of works out. Like, this has happened a few times on the show. It's so great that sometimes there's a story in the news that's just so perfect for the upcoming guest. And sometimes the story comes before we even know who's going to be the guest. And this is about your good friend and mentor, Mr. Hans Zimmer. And he said recently in an interview, with Israel Philharmonic Online, he said, "I have to confess I have a rather complicated relationship with my country because I'm Jewish." He said, "I started having a major anxiety attack, a major meltdown. I couldn't wait for the press conference to end. And as soon as it is finished, I got on the phone to my mom and said, 'Mom, I did something really terrible.' I told them. I let everybody know who we are. I felt like I put her in danger, that this was the deep, dark secret we should never speak about." There was a long pause at the other end, and then she said, "I'm very proud of you." And that is the only time she ever said that to me. So, Alexey.
And I can imagine that, because I knew his mother as well. I do remember, and it's very, very sweet, because I actually met his mother before I met Hans. Over 20 years ago in a place called Schloss Elmau, which is extraordinary special place. It's a super luxury hotel, and it's south of Germany, next to the border of Austria, where a lot of intellectuals go. It's not just, but it's like a kind of the intellectual luxury retreat. They have a constant music program as well, where they have some of the best performance come there, and instead of money, they give them free hotel nights and stuff like that. So it's a very special place, and one of the most regular guests there was, when she was still alive, was Hans's mother. And I remember her coming up to me and saying, "Oh my God, you have to meet my son. He's this wonderful composer," and blah, 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 and doing this, complimenting us and complimenting me, who just performed. But of course, a Jewish mama talking about the son. "Oh, my son, he's a great composer." Yes. So, "Yeah, sure, your son, okay, great composer."
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, Hans. Okay, Hans." And And then some months, interesting. I think a few months later or something, I did get to meet Hans in person as well when I performed in Bonn when Ennio Morricone got a big prize for his lifetime achievement, and Hans also got a prize at the time. I think also around 20 years ago or more. Basically, I was performing works by Morricone, and he really loved the arrangement that I was doing. And that's why I met Hans and said, "Oh my God, Morricone he loves it. I want that too, and I want it." And we got to speak about his mother then as well. So yeah, by the way, I met your mother, and she was like showing off with you and saying that. And he said, "Really? He never gives me any compliments. What is this?" And it was really that he would always make. He still to this day makes jokes of the Jewish mama who's like would never, Of course, she'd be super proud. And one time, it's such a funny story he told me. He went on to the biggest talk show in Germany, Thomas Gottschalk, Wetten, dass. It was a big show, and his mother was a big fan of the show. Really, the main reason he went on is because, he wanted to make his mom proud, which was obviously impossible, but he wanted to make his mom proud. And, so he did the show and blah, blah, blah. He went on it and he called his mother and said, "So, Mom, what did you think?" And she said, "How could you wear that shirt? I cannot face my girlfriends. How can you wear a shirt like this?" Okay, I give up.
I'll tell you, Alexey, 2 weeks ago, we had Linda Eder on our show. The great Broadway star, the original Lucy in Jekyll and Hyde. And as we're going, and Stephen and I are even a little starstruck, which really doesn't happen to us too often, but, we grew up with this voice, and she's so sweet and wonderful. And I get a text, my phone blows up, and it's my mother, and she says, "You have to tell her to move over. Her face is a little off the camera." That's what she said. That's what she said right away. But this reminds me of an old joke that we like to tell each other about the joke about the first Jewish president who is being sworn in. A hand on the hip, being sworn in, and his mother's there in the front row, and she leans over to the reporter and she says, "Do you see that young man being sworn in as the first Jewish president of the United States?" And the reporter's like, "Yeah. His brother's a doctor."
Yep.
But so I have two questions, and they're wildly different about Hans Zimmer. Of course, I think who isn't a fan of Hans Zimmer, and this the first one being really related to the story about you are a proud Jewish performer and you are in Vienna. Is the relationship with certain countries in Europe, like you said, is it complicated still? I mean, I know that so many have gone so far and have really, put all of that behind them. But it was not a concern, but it was something that I've thought about whenever someone said you should go sing in Germany. It's a little bit, even for me, it's in the 2000s.
I would say arguably, I don't know the numbers. I'm just saying something controversial here, but I would say there are probably more Nazis in the US than there are in Germany. I think there are more people who are anti-Semite in the US. I would say relatively sure about it. Look, it depends. There's Germany, there's Austria. You can't throw it all into one pot. Germany did a very good job with repentance. Mm-hmm. They really did a good job. Yes. And I know that because we moved to Germany actually when I was 6 years old. Mm-hmm. And I remember how it was taught at the schools. And it was taught very tough. And there was nothing about making it prettier, about what happened. Mm-hmm. And it was, people were devastated with the generations that came before. They were extremely sorry. There was, now, of course, now it's later. So a lot of the Nazis have died. Most of them have died, luckily, I think. Good riddance. And of course, the next generation, they weren't there. They don't remember it really. Sure. And of course, there are certain resurgences somewhere. But I think really from the numbers that I know of, not more than anywhere else. I would see the
Okay.
same, maybe slightly less than anywhere else. It's a little bit different. It all depends on where and how. Because East Germany, of course, they were unofficially under Soviet rule for a long time before the reunification. So there it didn't work as strongly, and you have now more right-winged people more from the east of Germany, even after the unification after many years. Austria is slightly different. I mean, there's a famous saying about Austria. It's that they are Austria is the country who made the world believe that Beethoven is Austrian and Hitler is German. So they're kind of clever about that. Yeah. And they kind of enjoyed themselves more in the role of we were invaded also, or we were taken over. They were not. They welcomed Hitler, who was obviously from Austria. They welcomed him with open arms. You had some of the most terrible Nazi leaders as well from Austria. And there, of course, there is the repentance in the system, but it's not as strong as in Germany. But by now, it's generally a very socialist in a positive sense of the word. I know this word can be like a negative word in the US. I have no idea how the fuck that happened. How can one think that the word socialist is? It's social. It literally means social. What? I don't know which people would take a normal word and make it something bad. Anyway, it's a socially thinking country in a positive way. And also, it is generally now, again, like I said, most of the Nazis, I think practically all of them have died. So the next generation, of course, there have been resurgences and more people voting for this and that. I mean, there's no obvious Nazi being it's not literally not allowed. You're not allowed to be that officially. You're not allowed to have memorabilia of the time. It's literally against the law, which is great and right. And I think people are generally aware. And if somebody came out and had that type of thought and really went for that, they would not be welcomed, I don't think, in this country. Of course, there are exceptions. Sure. But there are plenty of exceptions in Poland. In Hungary these days, there's a lot of unpleasant right-wing behavior in many countries all over Europe. So I think you're fine to visit Austria and Germany these days.
No, I mean, I'm not, was worried, but certainly when I started singing when I was 15, 16 years old, and you're not used to those kinds of things.
And you know what? It's literally, the times have changed. People done. Yeah. It's literally a new generation, and the generation who was raised with learning how horrible that time was and how wrong it was. So. And
my other question is, are you affiliated with Hans Zimmer? Are you in the remote control productions, his productions?
I'm not part officially of the production, but I've done many things with them. And throughout 20 years or so on various movies, sometimes contributing in a smaller way, sometimes in a bigger way. But on the whole, we've been really there for each other as well throughout the years. I'm always there for him. I was part of the first performances that Hans was trying out when he was doing live. I was playing with him. I always encouraged him to make that big step, because that was a big step for him, starting to tour with his Hans Zimmer live shows, which are incredibly popular. And he's going back on the road, and obviously not in the next year, but the year after that. So yeah, I'm close to a lot of them, and they are wonderful people. I can say working with Hans is just a pleasure. He's one of the most brilliant and yet creative people that are out there, and he's so brilliant also because he knows what he can do and he knows what he can't do, and when to get friends and fellow musicians to help him do whatever he needs to do. And he is a genius composer and a great person. So
excellent. Let's what's this? This is sort of an off the beaten path story that I think you would appreciate it. So of course, in everything that we consume from, plastic bottles and such, there is a slight degree of the plastic, very, 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 very small degree of the plastic that we actually ingest. This is all news to me, but someone did a calculation, and this thing was kind of the craziest thing I'd heard, and it made me never want to buy plastic again. And that is that, on average, we consume about a credit card's worth of plastic every month. So it's as though we are eating a credit card every month because of the residual plastic. Did you realize that you were eating credit cards, Alexey?
Well, eating credit, I certainly used my credit cards way too much, especially these days. So I'm not really that surprised by it. But having said that, well, I mean, it is worrying, this kind of development. I try to be careful. Let's put it this way. I am aware, for example, of certain things. I'm aware, for example, that when I'm eating fish, that this can happen. Now, many people don't.
And
don't
mercury.
know.
You mean the mercury?
The mercury, but even there's so much plastic that they eat. Actually, so
that's true. Yeah.
Eating plastic, so there's plastic in that, and of course there's plastic in so many things, and when we heat things up and blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. Well, so far we've survived with the plastic in our bodies.
That's true.
Also we have to remember, of course, these numbers are terrible, but obviously our bodies are pretty resistant to all the shit that we do to them. So I guess we can manage a piece of credit card once a month. So
I know. Obviously, what you're saying is so true, and these stories are so kind of affectionately alarmist. But it just sounds so weird. It's like, did you know that by the end of the year, you basically ate a fucking plate? Is literally it. That's literally what it is. You ate a plate in a year, and they break it down. Like, this piece is so funny because it even breaks it down into how many Legos, into how many other things you eat. I thought it was just sort of like a zany little.
Yeah, but why don't we spin it a little further? Why don't we just count the amount of flies that we eat every year? I'd like someone to do a study on that. That's probably more than a plate. Really?
They have. I've seen that before. I mean, I've seen that, because they tell you when you're sleeping how many bugs you eat while you're sleeping, and I breathe them in. I've personally been eating credit cards for 3 years now. It's the only way to. It's the only way to keep them away from my wife. I know.
So on a different note, the great British author John le Carré passed away this week. Tinker Tailor's Soldier Spy, Spy Who Came In from the Cold. Alexey, are you a spy novel fan? A spy movie kind of guy?
Not so much, I have to admit. I mean, I've seen my Inspector Poirot and a few things like that, but spy movies. Although, I mean, of course, I do love Sherlock Holmes. Obviously, I worked on the movie, so I gotta love it. Actually, also not just the movies that I worked on. I love the TV series, Sherlock Holmes. I don't know if you know the British TV series, which is phenomenal. Really, arguably one of the best TV series ever. With
is it the Cumberbatch one?
Cumberbatch one,
it's a great one.
But otherwise, unfortunately, I was just thinking, what interesting that I haven't read any of his stuff. But of course, he's a legend. He's without a doubt a legendary writer who passed away. But it wasn't COVID, was it?
No, it wasn't COVID. And in '89 as well. I mean, it's always too soon if you ask me. But '89, we got to be. Somewhat.
I know, but it's still shocking. I mean, I think a few years ago, a very close friend of mine and of our groups was another legendary actor, Roger Moore, the former James Bond actor.
Yeah,
and an age is just an age. I remember we were all shocked when he died because he was still so vibrant. Mm-hmm. I mean, we knew he was old, but just like the year before or something, we came to our concert, we hang out, we partied. a couple of years earlier, him and his wife drank me under the table during lunch in Israel, actually, where we were in the same festival. I thought, oh my God, how can he do that? And I had to go to a rehearsal, and I was like, oh my God, what a disaster. No. They were like, oh. So, it's age is just a number, and it's one says it's too late, but if somebody feels young, it's still too young to go, I think.
Yeah. And our final story for the day is, it's really good, Alexey, that you've been working on your moves, because you might have to add Olympic gold medalist to your resume, as breakdancing is going to be an Olympic sport in the 2024 Olympics.
Finally.
And how long you been waiting for this breakdancing? I couldn't believe when they took away wrestling one summer for one summer Olympics. I thought that was absolutely outrageous. But they're looking to add mixed martial arts maybe as well. Steven, are you gonna show us your moves that you learned in the 80s?
No, I think it's just going to extend the Olympics now from what is it, 3 weeks to like 17 after this. There's going to be so many more events. It's like, they did say shopping is going to be an event. Who knows?
Well, they did. Well, they did say they're going to reduce some of the earlier rounds of some of the other sports to accommodate breakdancing. Right. I don't remember.
Let's get rid of track and field and we'll put in breakdancing. Perfect.
I don't complain about it. Why did you use the breakdance, Steven? Oh.
No. I break things when I dance, but I don't.
Yeah. No. I funnily enough, I actually got into breakdance in my 40s, which is not the typical way to go. I was never that sporty or that whatever, but I had a friend who's a wonderful breakdancer, and she just for fun got me into it. And of course, some of the shows that I do require some crazy things. I thought, why not do it as a form of exercise? And I really got into it for a while. I was really practicing every day. Of course, if you start in your 40s, you can only be a pretty shit breakdancer at your very best. So I think I'm a pretty shit breakdancer as opposed to a terribly shit. But I mean, you can never be a great breakdancer. It's so physical and it's so demanding. But it's so much fun at the same time, and a lot of it is, of course, attitude and flair and everything. And plus, what does fascinate me is, it is a mix between sport and dance, obviously. Yeah. It can have the athletic aspect, but it's also so young, and a lot of those modern dances, breakdance, popping, locking, a lot of those crumping, styles. Yeah. Are really so fascinating because they're so young. They are still moving. They're still developing. So we are, in a way, experiencing history where, ballet basically has been locked down and said, well, that's it. I mean, it's modern dance, but basically it's kind of been more or less static. And these new dances they push their own borders all the time. And you have extraordinary people there. And I think there's a lot of potential I've always seen a lot of potential of those dance forms collaborating with opera, with modern, with dance, with classical music, because some of it is extraordinarily beautiful. And I can really see some of it integrating in future choreographies also, for other things in classical music.
Yeah. So this was also, just to wrap up that story, it was taken in favor of ocean rowing. I guess they felt that was a little redundant from their usual rowing. And
ocean rowing.
Ocean rowing. I guess it's a different thing in the ocean. And parkour, which I was surprised that it beat out. But I really wanted to tell you what an absolute pleasure it was. It's a joy that I got I really meant what I said, that I've been watching your videos for a long time, and it's such a pleasure to have you on our show, and I really want to thank you for coming on at this special time.
And Steven, anything in the future that you want to?
Yes, is there anything you want to plug? Yeah,
get out there. Please let us know, and we'll advertise it on our show. We'll advertise it on our
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well. Thank you so much. Spread the word about Music Traveler, because I think the streaming is going to be very exciting. I hope it's really going to give another boosting and helping hand to musicians during this difficult time and beyond. So that's always a help. And yeah, guys, get out there, and I was going to say get on the road, get off the road, but get in front of those microphones, record some beautiful stuff, make some beautiful videos, and put them out there. Absolutely, don't be afraid. I mean, what worse thing can happen than you completely screwing up and everybody hating you? That's really the worst thing.
That's a usual Thursday for me, so that's fine. I'll take that. But again, thank you so much for coming on, Alexey.
Thanks. All the best, guys.
Really what a joy. I think our field could learn a lot from you. And I hope people will be watching. So for our special guest, Alexey Igudesman, for Stephen Costello and myself, Gideon Dabi, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back after the new year.